Now we're going to talk about the different macromolecules. Have you ever heard the expression, you are what you eat? And if you did, do you know what is meant by that? Like say for instance here, what does this look like? A bunch of fast food and junk, right? So if that's what you consume, how does that affect you on the inside? Or the bottom, if you consume a lot of alcoholic beverages, how does that affect you? This individual here, a lot of fruits and vegetables, not a lot of meat. What effect does that have on the body? Or here looks to be a well-rounded vegetables, fruit, meat, grains. How does that affect you? So how does what you consume affect the overall organism? And we will dive into that. And so the first reason this phrase comes to be is because when you take into these foods, you digest them, you break them down, and then you use those subparts to build up your body, okay? So remember, if you're working out and you're building muscle, what you're actually putting that strain on your muscle and giving it tears and breaks that have to be fixed. And so after your workout, you might consume a lot of proteins or a protein shake. Now that protein that you took in now is going to be broken down and then used to build up the muscle in your body. So essentially you are what you eat. You're going to use components of what you consume to help rebuild or shape your body. So our bodies are largely made up of 4 molecules, which are also these biological molecules of biological classification. Do you know what they are? I think most of them are going to be known to you. So what is this? Okay, if somebody tell you, hey, you eat a lot of pastas and breads, right? What are they really saying? A lot of carbohydrates, yes? And how about this picture? A lot of meats, beans, and eggs. These are going to be high in your proteins. And how about butter and oil, right? Those are your fats. Now this is 3 out of the 4. So what's the 4th one? That's your nucleic acids, which usually don't have a food group, okay? So your DNA, any living organism essentially has DNA. So it's not one thing you would say, hey, I'm going to eat this to increase my DNA. All right, so your carbs. Let's talk about it. So when I first showed, what do you know, okay? What do you currently know about carbohydrates, right? You know everything, I know. So the first thing is it literally means a hydrate of carbon. Remember we talked about carbon. So it's carbon with water molecules attached to it. And then how many hydroxy groups it has makes those things polar or water soluble. So we also talked about that, right? Being polar, having this electronegative charge on it, and being able to dissolve it in water. And so here are some carbohydrates. So here are your C's, right? So each one of these lines will be a carbon, and then our carbon has this water, H2O, attached to it. So we have glucose, fructose, and galactose are simple sugars. Okay. So what foods are high in carbs? So this is back to the picture I showed you with your pastas, your rice, your pretzels, things in wheat. The monomer, the building block here, is a monosaccharide. What does mono mean? One. Okay. So this one ring simple sugar. So this ribose is a simple sugar. Glucose is a simple sugar. Okay. So ribose and deoxyribose we're going to talk about again when we talk about those nucleic acids because they make up your DNA and your RNA. Your glucose, fructose, and galactose are all simple sugars. So here we have this 3, 5, 6 rings of carbon, okay, but these are all monos. Di are going to be the next in the series, okay, so di is this 2. Putting 2 monos together gives you a disaccharide. Okay. This is your sucrose, your fructose, your maltose. They have 2 ring structures. Okay. So you join 2 together, you're going to lose water, so remember it's a dehydration synthesis, and then you form a disaccharide. This particular one is made from barley and is used in the production of beer. So, you see those beer and they talk about the wheat and things that are in them. So maltose is a sugar that's formed there. We have sucrose. So this is what we commonly call sugar, in quotes, like your table sugar. This is glucose plus fructose, and this gives you your sugar. Now, the reason sugar is bad for you is because, so our body usually uses glucose. That's our preferred, our cells, let me say, our cells' preferred energy source is glucose. Well, if you take in this sucrose, what your body is going to do is break it down into this glucose and fructose. And once you do that, what you're going to do is metabolize that glucose. So when they tell you to go carb heavy before you work out sometimes, right? That's giving your body the fuel it needs to do whatever the workout is you're about to do. So your body is going to utilize that glucose. Now, but any glucose that it doesn't metabolize, that it doesn't need, is going to be turned into fat. So if you have a high sugar diet, then all that extra glucose becomes fat. And then lactose, you hear about, oh, are you lactose intolerant? What does that even mean? It means you can't break it down. So it means you take in this lactose molecule, which is a glucose plus galactose, and normally lactase will come in and break this molecule down so that it can form its two subunits. But if you're lactose intolerant, you don't have that lactase, so you can't break it down. So this lactose stays together and causes discomfort later on in your digestive system. Okay? And lastly, we have these polysaccharides. And these are many monosaccharides joined together. Okay, so remember this. Add one, take out a water, add one, and so on until you get this large molecule. These are most abundant, okay? These are used to make up a lot of structural components. And they tend to be insoluble. We said one characteristic of carbs was that they were soluble in water. But we're talking about those monos and those dis, because these polys tend to be insoluble. So what are they? Starch. I know you've heard of starch, right? Starch is the energy storage in plants. So if you have an abundance of sugar in the plant, it usually stores it as starch. Look how long and big and complicated this molecule is. Can you imagine trying to break this down? It takes a lot longer than to break down the disaccharide. We have glycogen. This is the animal form of starch. So this is how we store energy in animals. We form this complicated glycogen model, and this is usually where we store it in our liver and our muscle cells. And then cellulose. This is found also in plant cell walls. We usually can't break this down, so it serves as dietary fiber to help our digestive tract along. And then peptidoglycans is in the cell wall of bacteria, okay? And chitin is in the cell walls of fungi. But it's also in the cell walls of, let's say, the blue crab, popular in Maryland. So you don't eat those shells because we have a hard time breaking them down. Now, some people say humans can't digest them. Some people say we have a chitinase that allows us to. That's still up in the air, but you still don't want to go eat the shell of a lobster, right? And then these glycoaminoglycans are found in our cartilage and extracellular matrix. Now you will see these in some drinks that are supposed to help lubricate your joints. Those are full of gags. Like, does it really work? If I drink this stuff, will it get to my joints and work? Who knows? But they are marketing this. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns on carbs? If so, write them down, bring them to class, let's talk about it.